This is the Learn It information for Fix It 5 week 2 passage. Starting out, because we did week 1 together in class, I'm just going to do some review of the concepts that we covered last week. First one is capitalization. The times you need to capitalize is the first word of a sentence, proper nouns and adjectives, the personal pronoun I, or a title when it's used with someone's name. We also talked about the 3 different types of end marks you can use. For most sentences, which are statements or declarative sentences, you use a period. If the sentence is asking a question, you use a question mark. If the sentence is showing strong emotion, exclaiming something, then you would use an exclamation mark. Hopefully you know all those at this point. Period, question mark, exclamation mark. We talked about indenting. Indenting is what you do to show the beginning of a new paragraph, and you need a new paragraph if there's a change in speaker, topic, place, or time. We talked some about subjects and verbs. A verb has a few functions. It shows action, it links a subject to another word, or it helps another verb. Every verb has a subject. Verb, not verbs. A subject is a noun or a pronoun that performs the action of the verb. So you're going to be getting in the habits, just like last year, of finding a grouping of subject-verb pairings and all the words related to that subject and verb group of words. A clause is a group of words that has a subject and a verb. We're marking main clauses with the brackets here. A main clause can stand alone as a sentence. You can have a clause that can't be a sentence all by itself, but it does have a subject and a verb. A main clause, however, is a sentence by itself. An example, and one that's marked as a main clause, is Dorinda tormented those around her. That's a main clause. Prepositional phrases. That is a group of words that begins with a preposition and ends with a noun or a pronoun. The noun or pronoun in a prepositional phrase is called the object of the preposition. I'm going to fix this to say prepositional phrase. So the noun there is called the object of the preposition. It's important to remember that phrase, object, and you'll mark those with an OP. You should have done that last week. The preposition is the first word in the prepositional phrase, and prepositions show the relationship between the object of the preposition and another word in the sentence. And we'll kind of look at those when we find some prepositional phrases. The object of the preposition is the last word in a prepositional phrase, and it's always a noun or a pronoun. Now, something to notice you don't see mentioned in prepositional phrase is a verb, because you have clauses and you have phrases. A clause, like a main clause, must have a verb to be a clause. A phrase does not have a verb in it. So if you think you're marking a prepositional phrase and a verb appears, you don't have a prepositional phrase. Some might trick you because you might see words that are sometimes used as prepositions, but if there's a verb in there, it's probably not a prepositional phrase. And then we talked a little bit about this idea of pronoun case. When you have a pronoun that's an object of a preposition, you have to use the objective case of that pronoun. And we talked about that a little bit in class. If you want to review that, it's in page 2 in the Learn It information from week 1. Just remember objective case. That's the difference between me and I. I is subject case of a personal pronoun. Me is the object case. He is the subject case. Him is the object case. She is a subject case, so that would be a pronoun that's a subject of a clause. Or her, which is the object. So that would be an object of a preposition. You need to know which one to use. So know the difference between subject case and object case, because those are things that you may see wrong that you need to change in the future. Last week, we talked about for style strong verbs. That's a verb that creates a strong image or feeling. And remember that a strong verb is always an action verb. And then this idea of pronoun agreement. Pronoun must agree in number, gender, and case, either subject case or an object case, with its antecedent. So if your antecedent, the first use of the noun, like King Morton, okay, so that's our first use of the noun, and we're going to talk about him later and use a pronoun, it has to agree in number and gender. And case, okay? It has to be the correct case. So if we talk about King Morton, was angry with his daughter. He, because King Morton is a singular masculine subject. So that's why we want that. There. Then we have week 2. This is the new information that we're adding this week. Conjunctions. Conjunctions are words that connect words, phrases, or clauses. A specific type of conjunction that we focus on is a coordinating conjunction, which you'll label CC. This connects the same type of words, phrases, or clauses. So the things it's connecting must be grammatically the same, either the same part of speech, 2 nouns, 2 verbs, 2 adjectives, or 3. The same type of phrase, maybe 3 prepositional phrases in a row, or the same type of clause. So a main clause, 2 main clauses might be joined together. Which brings you to some patterns for commas, because a lot of times when you're joining things, you'll have items in a series. If you have more than 2 items in a series, that pattern is A, comma, B, comma, and C. Okay, so you have your coordinating conjunction. You have commas between these 2, and then a comma before the coordinating conjunction. But if you have a comma and it's joining 2 items, only 2 items, you don't use a comma. A and B is what you do. Or A but B, anything like that. When you're joining them, if it's just 2, no comma is needed. It's only when it's 2 or more than 2, excuse me. If a coordinating conjunction joins 2 main clauses, I think they give an example here. Yes. Dorinda raced through the gardens and Marabella collected daisies. So Dorinda raced through the gardens is a complete sentence. Marabella collected daisies is a complete sentence. They are joined with a coordinating conjunction. In order to be strong enough, it must have a comma there to join the 2 of them. So you use a comma before a coordinating conjunction when it connects 2 main clauses. So your pattern is main clause, comma, then the coordinating conjunction, and then your second main clause. Sometimes you'll have 1 subject performing 2 verbs. There's an example in your book. Dorinda raced through the gardens and collected daisies. So Dorinda, the subject, is doing 2 things. She's racing and she's collecting. So what that coordinating conjunction is joining is the 2 verbs, 2 parts of speech. So that means it's following this pattern, A and B, joining 2 verbs. So no comma is needed there. You are going to write CC over all of your coordinating conjunctions in addition to the things we had before. Then if you notice on page 8 of your book, there is some practice with coordinating conjunctions. They've given you some subjects that are sentences that would either benefit from a coordinating conjunction, and there's not one used, or one that's used incorrectly. So we'll look at those. One of the advice that they give, or the advice that they give, is consider what the coordinating conjunction is connecting, and then rewrite your sentences correctly. So the first one is Dorinda cried out, but when she pricked her finger on the thorn. You have here a main clause, Dorinda cried out. Then you have an adverbial clause. So I'm going to mark this just so you can see. Main clause, Dorinda cried out. The second thing is an adverbial clause, a dependent clause. Are those the same type of clause? They are not. So you wouldn't use, it's not appropriate to have a coordinating conjunction there because you're not joining the same type of clause. So the sentence should just be, Dorinda cried out when she pricked her finger on the thorn. The second one, the sisters argued, then they reunited. What I see here is a main clause. The sisters argued. Then I see another subject and verb, they reunited. That's also a main clause. So here it would be appropriate. We need a comma after the first main clause, and we say, but then they reunited. So that's where you would use one. The third one, mud splattered her dress and was ruined. This one is misleading because the way this is written here, mud splattered her dress and was ruined. It sounds like the mud was ruined because it splattered her dress, and that's not what it means. It's trying to mean the mud ruined her dress. So either you can make it two sentences. Mud splattered her dress. Now, the reason I didn't say it was ruined is because mud is also an it. So we want to be clear what we're referring to, and you can't be clear in this case. So you could just split it into two sentences. Mud splattered her dress, the dress was ruined. Or you could say mud splattered her dress and the dress was ruined, in which case you need a comma here and the dress was ruined, and you use your coordinating conjunction. The last one, I get a lot of sentences like this in student writing. Okay, we have Dorinda teased Marabella, but Marabella laughed, and the sisters argued, yet they hugged each other in the end. Technically, this is not wrong, but you know the pattern is main clause, comma, coordinating conjunction, main clause. Really only appropriate to have two. If you start sticking on a bunch, linking them together, it is not stylish to do it that way. So a better way to write this is to make more than one sentence. Maybe two groupings of main clauses. Let's just do it this way. Dorinda teased Marabella, but Marabella laughed. Okay, those kind of go together. Then we'll start a whole new sentence here. The sisters argued, yet they hugged each other in the end. So same thing, main clause here, comma, coordinating conjunction. So we're going to split that into two separate sentences that follow that pattern, main clause, comma, coordinating conjunction, main clause. But we're going to make them make sense. When you're stringing a bunch together in a row, see if you can split them up so they make more sense and sound more stylish that way. And that is the learned information for the week 2 passage. You're going to go one day at a time so that you can focus proper attention. We're getting a lot more complex here. So each day you have 4 days worth of homework for the Fix-It, 4 passages to go through. So each day, correct just one passage. Just like last week at the top of the page, you'll see you have your vocabulary, but you know how much to pick of each one. You know you have one coordinating conjunction that you've got to mark on day 1. You know there are 3 prepositional phrases, and you're going to mark the preposition with the word prep over the top of it. You'll underline the whole phrase and OP over the object of the preposition. You are going to have 2 main clauses that you need to mark with brackets, and you're going to find 2 subject-verb pairs in those main clauses. What's the verb and what's the subject? You're going to need to indent 1 time. Sometimes it's at the beginning of the passage, but sometimes it's in the middle, so pay attention. You're gonna need to add in 3 commas, probably related to how they are used with coordinating conjunctions. And you're gonna need 1 end mark on day 1, but look up to the top of the page to see what you're gonna need. We'll go over it in class. I will have a copy of the student book, just like last week, so that we can check, just like we did in class on week 2. So that you can check your work against mine. Use a different color of ink from what you do at home versus what we check in class. And then there should be, at the bottom of your page, a place to rewrite the passage. That's something you do after you check your thing in class. But there is something about writing it out at that bottom in the correct form that will help cement those language patterns, those correct language patterns in your head. Writing it out will help with that. So that is the learned information for week 2 of Fix It 5. And you can go ahead and get started with your editing.